Hello, everybody. Anthony Aniano from RotoBaller Radio and RotoBaller.com here with the Week 14 waiver wire, the early waiver wire for your 2022 fantasy football season. Full disclosure, as always, using Yahoo roster percentages as our sounding point at or about 50% rostered or lower. Okay, and as always, because it's the early waiver wire to get it out to you, we record before the Sunday and Monday night games. So obviously things could change a little bit between now and then. If they do, I will be sure to comment on my thoughts on those changes in the comments right here on RotoBaller's YouTube channel. Now, be mindful, Week 14, the last week of most fantasy regular seasons. 6 teams on a bye. Falcons, Bears, Packers, Colts, Saints, and Commanders. So some big players there at a variety of positions. We also had injuries at the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tua, all come out with injury. At the running back, Seattle running back Kenneth Walker dealing with an ankle. He leaves the game. Wide receivers, Cortland Sutton, Treylon Burks, Jalen Waddle, all banged up. So it's already thin with the buys. We lose player due to injury. I'm sure there'll be other injuries that roll out. News will trickle out over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll start at the quarterback position. You may need a quarterback, especially with Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers. Okay, they're the big two on bye. And then with the waiver wire, with the injuries, Lamar Jackson and Tua, maybe even Jimmy G. So 4 or 5 quarterbacks that are usable, all potentially 2 definitely out because of the bye and 3 in danger of missing time due to the injury. So at the quarterback position, especially in a 2 QB league, number 5, Brock Purdy, the rookie for the 49ers. Does what he needed to do, gets the win for the 49ers, checks down to McCaffrey, finds Deebo Samuel, 25 of 37, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 18.3 fantasy points. 49ers play the Buccaneers next week, so he's quarterback number 5. He's 0% rostered coming into today. At number 4, Tyler Huntley comes in for Lamar Jackson. We've seen Huntley in the past. He can run the ball, throws the ball okay. He's not the most consistent. 1% rostered, 10 carries, 41 yards, rushes for a touchdown, 27 completions for 187 passing yards, an interception, no passing touchdowns, 15.6 fantasy points. All quarterback points are calculated on a 6-point per touchdown format. Baltimore on the road next week at Pittsburgh. Tyler Huntley sits at number 4. Quarterback number 3, Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans. Why? I like the matchup against Jacksonville. He only threw for 141 and a touch, 3 rushing attempts for 34 yards, but a good matchup against Jacksonville, who Jared Goff and the Lions just lit up. But my top 2 quarterbacks to add, the ones you need to get on your roster. Number 2, Mike White of the Jets. I'm a believer now, folks. 369 yards, 2 interceptions, no passing touchdowns. Jets let him throw the ball 57 times in their attempted comeback against the Minnesota Vikings. 3 carries, 7 yards, rushes for a touchdown, finishes with almost 22.5 fantasy points. The one downside to Mike White, brutal matchup next week on the road at the Buffalo Bills. But he's turned Garrett Wilson back into a star. The running game has been effective with Knight. So Mike White sits at number 2 at the quarterback rankings. But my top quarterback add of the week is Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. Guys, this Lions offense is becoming must start. Goff, both run. DeAndre Swift returns to relevancy this week. Williams gets another touchdown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is a complete superstar. DJ Chark has a nice game. So Jared Goff, 50% roster on Yahoo. Mike White, by the way, 18%. Jared Goff, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdown passes in his last 2 games. Multiple games with 20 or more fantasy points. 30.6 points this week. And they are home against the Minnesota Vikings in Week 14. So the quarterback position, Brock Purdy, Tyler Huntley, Ryan Tannehill, Mike White, number 2, Jared Goff, number 1. Now, as far as the running back position goes, thin, but injury with Kenneth Walker. Problem with Seattle is, I truly believe what you're going to see out of Seattle now is a split situation, if Kenneth Walker were to miss some time. Tony Jones, 7 carries, 14 yards, 2 receptions for 18. 5.2 fantasy points. DJ Dallas gets the bulk of the carries, 10 carries, 37 yards for the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle's playing Carolina next week. Tony Jones is 0% rostered. DJ Dallas, 3% rostered. I have Tony Jones as my running back 5 off the waiver wire. DJ Dallas at number 4. Now, my top 3 are more viable options, in my opinion. At number 3, Zonovan Knight of the New York Jets, 47% rostered. 15 carries, 90 yards, 5 receptions on 5 targets, 28 yards, 16.8 fantasy points. Tough match on the road at Buffalo next week for the Jets. And the other concern is I'm not worried about James Robinson. I'm not worried about Ty Johnson. But Michael Carter will eventually be back from this ankle injury. How does the workload split then with Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight? So he sits at number 3. The number 2 running back ad, Cam Akers. Newsflash, right now with all those injuries, he is the best offensive piece that the Rams have. He's sitting at 45% rostered. He's got 10 or more carries in 2 out of his last 3 games. Kieran Williams, I thought he'd have a role. He doesn't. It's still Cam Akers' job right now for the Rams. 17 carries, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns this week for Cam Akers. Finished with 19 fantasy points. Good matchup next week against the Vegas Raiders on Thursday night. But the number 1 running back ad of the week, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. We've been waiting for the rookie to emerge, and he did this past Thursday night. 23% rostered. He goes 14 carries for 64 yards. He gets 6 receptions on 6 targets for 41 yards on Thursday night. 16.5 fantasy points. Tough matchup against the Jets, but if I could buy into that Buffalo Bills offense, I'm going to do it. So running backs, Tony Jones, DJ Dallas at 4, Zonovan Knight 3, Cam Akers 2, and James Cook 1. Now, wide receiver position is thin off the waiver wire. Not much there. At number 3 is Jahan Dotson. Now, he's on a bye this upcoming week, week 14. He's not going to help you much. But this Washington Commanders offense is McLaurin's the clear stud. Curtis Samuel has been involved. Jahan Dotson got off to a hot start, got injured, but now is back in the mix. Okay, he had 4 touchdowns in his first 3 games this season. Then he comes along, 5 for 54, the tying touchdown late in the game against the Giants on 9 targets, 16.4 fantasy points. If you have room on your roster to get him for less because of the upcoming bye week for them, then go ahead and do it. At number 2, Corey Davis of the New York Jets. I'm in on Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore had the opportunity to make a big play, couldn't get a foot in bounds. It was disappointing. Corey Davis was targeted 10 times by the New York Jets after they trailed the Minnesota Vikings. There's a chance the Jets are trailing Buffalo again. Mike White slinging the ball all over the field. Garrett Wilson is the number 1. Corey Davis is the number 2. 5 for 85. He was targeted 10 times by Mike White. 13.5 fantasy points for the veteran. 13% rostered. The number 1 ad at the wide receiver position, and like I said, it is thin at wide receiver, the waiver wire this week, but DJ Chark of the Detroit Lions. I'm buying in as much as I can right now on that Detroit offense as they go against that Minnesota defense that Mike White, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, and Zonovan Knight all were successful against. Okay, so you could expect the same for Detroit. In Detroit, love it even more. DJ Chark, 16% rostered. He's got 11 targets in his last 2 games since returning from injury. He goes 5 catches, 98 yards on 6 targets in week 13, 14.8 fantasy points. Okay, so wide receivers, Jahan Dotson, Corey Davis, but DJ Chark in that matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, the number 1 wide receiver off the waiver wire. And finally, at the tight end position, a couple of names to mention. Evan Ingram, 43% rostered, got in the end zone for the Jacksonville Jaguars, finished with 14 fantasy points. Jacksonville is at Tennessee, a team you can definitely throw the ball against. See if that Jacksonville offense rebounds. At number 2, Greg Dulcich of the Denver Broncos reemerged in week 13. In 7 games played this year, he's got over 11 or more fantasy points in 4 of them, including this week where he goes 6 receptions for 85 yards, was targeted 8 times by Russell Wilson. He was the most consistent pass catcher on that Broncos team. Cortland Sutton was injured. Jerry Jeudy just came back from injury. Dulcich was highly featured by the Broncos against the Ravens. Broncos faced the Kansas City Chiefs in week 14. And number 1, Noah Fant of the Seattle Seahawks. If Kenneth Walker is out and that run game is limited for Seattle, it opens up more passing opportunities for the tight end, as well as Lockett and Metcalf against Carolina for Seattle in Week 14. Noah Fant, 13% rostered, 4 for 42, a touchdown in Week 13, 14.2 fantasy points on 5 targets. He would be my number 1 tight end ad if I need a tight end. Injuries seem to avoid the position. There are a few tight ends going to be out on a bye. Nobody major. Probably the best one would be Cole Kmet, maybe Logan Thomas. So maybe you can avoid and not have to worry about adding a tight end off the waiver wire. To wrap it up now, my top 5 waiver wire ads, regardless of position, for Week 14. Number 5, Jets quarterback Mike White. At number 4, Detroit Lions quarterback Jared Goff. At number 3, Jets running back Zonovan Knight. Number 2, Rams running back Cam Akers. And the number 1 ad for Week 14 of your fantasy football season, Buffalo Bills running back James Cook. Folks, don't forget, head over to RotoBaller.com right now. Sign up for any premium pass using the promotional code ACES. Get that football premium pass, lineup optimizers, team sync tools, you name it. RotoBaller has it as well right there on its free app. Get all the news right there, courtesy of RotoBaller.com. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel. Content all week long, starting with the waiver wire, ending at the end of the week with me once again with the sleepers and value plays. Give me a follow on Twitter at @AnianoFantasy and hear me, Josh Hayes, Scott Angle, Real Talk Graph all week long on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.